You can't front on that. Yeah.
What you doing? What you doing? What you doing?
You can't front on that. Yeah.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of What You Doing in Comics. It's me, Jason Bennett from PopCultHQ and PodCultHQ, the podcast that hits harder than a guy with a prescription for hymns. Today, I have a special guest definitely returning guest. You've seen him a number of times here at PopCultHQ, but a special publisher spotlight with creator Rylend Grant, the owner of Happyville Comics. The Hollywood screenwriter has authored a number of short stories and is the co-writer of the films Haunted Heart and A State of Consciousness. He is the co-host of the award-winning podcast The Writer's Block with fellow comic book writer David Aberrant. Rylend is the Ringo Award-winning writer of hit indie titles like ABERRANT, BANJAX. I could just read my shirt. I mean, maybe it's easier for you.
It's a great shirt.
And his dark, quirky crime drama, The Peacekeepers, is returning to Kickstarter for issue 5. Boom! Love it. Teaming once again with his aberrant creative team of W. Leon Diaz, Juan Jocotrano, and HDE. Welcome to the show once again, Rylend Grant. Rylend, thank you for joining us.
Happy to be back. Happy to be on my my favorite pop culture and comics site once again. Thanks for the invite.
I appreciate that. I mean, anytime. It's always great sitting and chat with you. I like to really take in a lot of your mind, because I like how you write your stories and how even though most of your titles might fall in like the action adventure kind of thing, there are little offshoots where the jump adds astral projection and the Suicide Jockeys with the, I don't remember how you call it, tokusatsu, tokusatsu, so that's always fun to watch. Recently, I've seen you put more of a focus on your publishing label, Happyville Comics, including adding a lot of content from the Writer's Block with David on your Happyville Comics YouTube channel. So how are you currently molding the shape of your label? How do you envision the direction you'd like for your label in the immediate future and beyond?
Yeah, I mean, I think you start with the why. I think that a lot of us creators were going into business for ourselves, and that's necessarily. There are fewer publishers, traditional publishers, and more we are starting to see that traditional publishers can't offer us a lot. It is very hard to make money putting comics in comic shops through traditional publishers as a creator. And what we have found, particularly over the last couple of years, is that when we do it ourselves, when we go to Kickstarter, we crowdfund or whatever, we can make some cash. We get a really devoted fan base, very enthusiastic. We'll come back. We'll fall in love with most everything we do, and will show up for us. And we get to keep our rights. No
middleman, because that's definitely going to dip into the cost, and
the math on it is crazy, Jason, because it's like, I can sell 20,000 copies of a comic in a comic shop and make $1.50, or I can have 300 backers on Kickstarter and make $15,000. That's like and that's not all profit, of course. Like I'm shouldering a lot of the load, but I mean, hey, when I put a comic in comic shops, usually I'm shouldering all the load financially also. So the math is on our side, and so you see a lot of us who, some people are content. I'll do some Kickstarter books and I'll be a lone creator and all that stuff. but some of us have kind of started making more out of it, and I was inspired by the job that people like Charlie Stickney are doing and Pat Shan, where they have become a fan base press with Barbara and Bryant Dillon. They have really they have made more out of it. They have become micro publishers, and I think that we are already seeing it. But more and more over the next couple of years, you're going to see a micro publisher boom. You're going to see a lot of people going into business for themselves and making more out of this. And the business will fracture more and more, and you'll still have a handful of quote unquote traditional publishers that will survive. That will be harder and harder, and they will have to make changes and reinvent themselves to do so. But yeah, I see the real estate getting carved up, and and I want my corner. And I think I deserve my corner. I've worked for my corner.
Oh, sure.
I think the people on my corner will be very happy, very well entertained, and so yeah.
So one thing I'm curious on, because these are topics that are just kind of fresh in the industry right now, do you feel that decisions being made like with Diamond or uh, possibly, the concern about tariffs and stuff, do you think those have taken some consideration into why is it now is a good time to really focus more on Happy People Comics and your label as your own?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that to say the tariffs are a reason not to do it, right? It is something that we are dealing with now, where we made the decision to, I say we because I'm bringing some more people on to kind of help run the ship with me, and we made the decision to do this. We started doing this. We got everything set up, and by the time it was time to start printing a lot of stuff, the tariffs became a very serious issue. And
Sure.
so it is hard, it is very expensive to print outside the United States now. However, it was already a lot more expensive to print inside the United States. So the cost of printing just went up significantly, just all across the board. Even if you are dealing with a US based printer, and we usually deal with Comic Impressions in Florida, and they're
Okay,
amazing.
I didn't know if you wanted to mention them or not, but yeah,
Yeah,
that's I'm familiar with them, and
yeah,
obviously, and I knew that's who you work with, but I thought, well, they're in Florida, right? So
yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
know how tariffs might impact them. Like just I think yesterday, someone was showing me how BCW's backing boards are going up like 150% or something. So
Yeah, insane.
just figuring out,
Yeah,
how these things, and even with Diamond's Chapter 11, you saw so many publishers say, okay, we'll figure something else out. We'll
yeah,
team with Penguin Random House, we'll team with Lunar, or we'll find all these
yeah,
different ways. So, I wasn't sure
yeah,
with that, with Comic Impressions, who are great, by
yeah, yeah. Comic Impressions, they're great. I mean, to tell you the truth, I have not. I am about to print the Jump #4, and I do not have my quote from them yet. I have not submitted
the
for
way.
it. They are a US based printer. However, those shops are hit hard too because a lot of them they have to go outside the United States for paper, for ink, for supplies, for all that stuff.
Sure.
And so even if they aren't, well, a lot of other people were, and now those people are trying to buy from the stateside suppliers, and the stateside suppliers run out of stuff. Stuff gets more expensive in general. So yeah, I mean, we are taking it on the chin in that respect, and so that makes it really difficult. On the other side of it, the diamond stuff is definitely, it has been a wrecking ball, and a lot of publishers have or will go out of business because of this. I'm seeing comic shops drop like crazy. My what was probably my favorite comic shop close to me is called the Comics Factory in Pasadena. I'm pointing towards Pasadena right now. You can't
Oh,
tell, but
sure,
that's what I'm doing.
sure.
And it was just this great shop that had one of everything, right?
Yeah.
And had been around for 35 years. And yeah, I think with the distribution hiccups, they have really had a hard time, and they have to order boxes and boards and all sorts of supplies and import toys, and so it just got overwhelming, and
Right.
they couldn't go anymore, and so that's sad. And so
Well,
we don't
yeah,
want to see that.
especially after all the comic shops that we lost during the pandemic
Yeah,
that couldn't, hey, we don't have an online store. We don't, our stores are shut down.
yeah,
Uh, but
yeah,
that's
yeah,
it's heartbreaking. But
yeah, yeah. But hopefully, I mean, here's the thing: is the like comic release slash ordering process has for a very long time, forever almost, been ridiculous. Like try to explain to your aunt in Grand Rapids, Michigan, how to get a copy of your comic book. You know what I'm saying? Well, you got
sure,
to go in, you got to pre-order it, you got to tell them this, you got to tell them that, you got to come back like 2 months later, you got to, it was insane. And so hopefully, as things shake out here, I mean, we have required an update for a very long time, and hopefully hopefully it will become easier for people to get our products, for us to get products to people. Hopefully, there was a certain monopoly where it was like it was difficult to be distributed by Diamond, or to be distributed by Diamond and make it worthwhile from a financial standpoint. And so there was a monopoly sort of situation that was held by the traditional publishers. So hopefully whatever comes of this, it becomes a little easier for micro publishers, for individual creators to get books in comic shops, and hopefully whatever solution we come up with becomes like tenable for the actual comic shops. And hopefully, it's weird because it's like we held on for so long to the previous system, and it's like, well, we got to fight for this, we got to keep these comic shops in business, and we do, um, but I don't know that we had the right answer and approach to doing that. It was what was required was not doubling down on a obscenely flawed system. It required a tactical retreat, a reassessment, and a new solution.
right, and kind of just the evolution of things, and how you adapt to it. If whether you embrace it and take the time to refocus, reorganize, or whatever, and go into different directions, then you may not have. It's not just, oh, Diamond's the only thing that's out there now. They're the only game in town. That's how it's done. Now it's you know especially with crowdfunding sites and things like that. And you're really good at that too with your projects, that your turnaround time for the printing of the books is quick, because it's not like the campaign's over. Okay, now we're going to pay for our artists and all this, and they're going to start working on this. These things are already either in progress or completed by time uh, campaign ends. So you've always been ahead of that, which makes for a shorter time for fulfillment, which is
Yeah.
obviously something that's great in people's eyes who back your campaigns.
Yeah, I had a rule for a long time that I would not kickstart until the book was actually done. We had a slightly different situation with the Jump 4, where the book was it was all drawn, it was being colored, it was done, it was finished before the campaign was finished. So that was a little different thing. We will do that whenever we can. I think that that is a really good way to go. Then you don't disappoint anyone. You're not walking on a wire. There will be situations when we need to crowdfund before we go after something. Um, but we will be very careful about how and why we take that step, because it is risky, and I don't like disappointing anyone. So you end up in a tough situation sometimes if you do that, but sometimes it's just necessary. Sometimes you need the capital. Sometimes I mean, we are, I'm breaking news here, but we're moving into the game space. We have two games in development, and we have like a staff of game people right now.
Very nice.
Um, tabletop games,
Okay.
and it costs. I mean, it costs a lot to develop a game,
Sure.
and so we are still, build prototypes and all that stuff, and so we are still figuring out. Well, okay, well, how do we handle that? You know what I'm saying? Like, how do we?
Well,
Uh,
yeah, a completely
yeah,
different medium and different target group,
yeah, yeah.
for the most part.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, yeah, there's overlap, you know, and
oh,
it's
sure.
yeah, yeah, and you're just telling stories, you know, and you sell via the same site. Um, but I mean, I watched it firsthand. I had when I did Suicide Jockeys, you talked about that book earlier. My Tokusatsu joint, boom. Uh,
Yeah.
uh, I did it at Source Point Press, and Source Point Press was kind of having this they were having like a business change while I was there. And it was like, well, they were a comic company for a long time. They decided, oh, we're going to take one of our comic properties, we're going to turn it into a game, and it was insanely successful, like much more successful than any other books had been.
Yeah.
And so while I was at Source Point, I watched, you know, Jacob Way, who was the CEO at Source Point, have to kind of leave SourcePoint to become the CEO of Deepwater Games, which became a much bigger business than did SourcePoint. Um, and so, you know, I filed that away, and I was always interested in it, and I always had this story, and the inclination. It was really kind of about finding the right people to help bring something like that to life. It's just like, you know, I mean, I wanted to do a comic book back in college, but I couldn't draw, I couldn't color, I couldn't letter, and it was hard for me back then to find the right people.
Sure.
As soon as it became more possible to find the right people, well, I did a comic book. So same difference, where it's like, well, you know, kind of directing these games, and I needed to find the right cinematographer, editor, production designer, that sort of thing.
Project
Um,
manager or
yeah, 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 yeah. So
well, and it's interesting to talk about the storytelling aspect of it with TTRPGs and things like that. And this is where my weird question comes in.
yeah,
Uh, what advantages do you feel comics have as a medium with
yeah.
regards to storytelling than, say, the film and TV industry? You know, given your experience, you know, over 15 years of experience in Hollywood and working in that industry, what do you think? How do comics stand apart from that as a medium, as far as you know, being able to deliver your stories?
Yeah, I mean that's a very good question. Uh, I think one, just from an actually getting stuff made standpoint, which I think is very important when you're a creator of anything. I spent a very long time writing. You know, I spent about 12 years writing movies that didn't get made, you know. And I polished
Sure.
movies that did get made and whatnot, but it's like I wrote some really amazing stories that I was paid very handsomely for. Those movies kind of bought my house, but they didn't get made in the end because very little gets made in Hollywood. A lot gets developed, very little gets made. It is very expensive to make a film. Like, you're talking a couple of $1 million minimum usually, but the movies I was writing big action movies, right? So you're talking about $250 million movies sometimes, and very few of those get made. And so I wrote a comic script and I handed it off to an artist, and a couple of days later, I got a drawn page back, and I almost started crying. It was just like, oh wow, this is what's possible in this. The main reason that I moved over, however, it was born out of a creative crisis. I had written movies for about 12 years, and I was having a hard time with it. And I hate to be the guy who complains about getting paid to write movies. That guy's a jerk. But it was like, we just saw. I mean, I came up in the Sundance movement. I saw Pulp Fiction. I said, I want to do that. I
Yeah.
moved out to LA. I went to the American Film Institute Conservatory where Darren Aronofsky and David Lynch went, and I got my snooty, artsy filmmaker education. And by the time I got spit into the workforce, they had kind of stopped making those kinds of movies. And as things were moving along, what you could do in Hollywood, the kinds of films that Hollywood would make, it shrank and it shrank and it shrank. And then so I'm about 12 years in, and I kind of felt like, there were four movies that you could make in Hollywood and that they wanted you to write them the same way. And again, I got pretty good at writing those movies, but it felt like I was laying bricks or something. It didn't really feel like I
Well,
was,
I think you get lost in the shuffle too if there's,
yeah.
there are so many few different types of films they're looking to put out, then everyone else is, pitching scripts and things to them that everyone else is as well. So I think that just diminishes your chances of being successful or getting picked up.
Yeah, you see 50 of the same things over and over and over again, and it's tough. And and in a lot of ways, it's worse right now because there's just so little being made. Period. After the strike and after the sort of collapse, the streaming moves and all these things. So, um, but so I was at I was 12 years in, and I was at like a crisis point. I was like, well, I don't know if I don't know if I have 12 more years in me. Like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And do I go to law school? Do I blah blah blah? Like I had been very successful. I'm not the guy that moved out and didn't work. I was the guy who moved out and immediately got hired and had written professionally for 12 years. But I was kind of done and I was uninspired. And writing has always been, I don't know, it's like therapy for me. It's fuel. It's all of these things that keeps me going, and I wasn't feeling that anymore. And so, what I looked at with comics is like, well, you can tell any kind of story in comics, and you can tell it any way you want to tell it. As long as it's good, people will love it. And so, um, that was what I did. I started writing comic book stories, and I made a promise to myself that I would never tell a straightforward A to B to C story, that I would, I would double down on experimental elements and unreliable narrators and, play with structure and just make things as, just make it creative therapy. And you and I have talked about it a lot. I mean, those first two books, really set a high standard where it was like, well, BANJAX is basically a Batman and Robin story, and the even
But the
issues are
dual
told.
perspective is a nice touch to
Yeah,
it too, alternating
yeah,
issues. So that's
yeah, yeah. Well, that was what I was getting into. Is like the odd issues are told from the Batman's point of view. The even issues are told from Robin's point of view. They're telling the same
right,
story, but they're telling a very different version of the same
right.
story.
Their
And
viewpoints
you,
are
yeah, and you're not told what the truth is in the end, and you're just kind of left to deal with that. I mean, the fourth issue of that book is told from the point of view of a man who has not slept in 7 days and is literally driving him crazy. And so he starts to see all of this shit, and you/he don't know if it's actually happening or if this is stuff that is caused by his psychosis. Um, I mean, there's that eighth issue of Aberrant that is told from the point of view of a character who's dying on an operating table, and he kind of is kind of a this is your life issue where he is an obsessive Jeopardy fan, and so he imagines his life as Jeopardy categories, and
I can picture the cover, the variant that you had for
yeah,
it, or
yeah, yeah. And so I just got wild and I just swung for the fences, and people loved it and people celebrated me for it, and I was happy,
well, it sounds
and
like it,
so
it, it sparked, some creativity out of you, where you might have
yeah,
been kind of like in this lull from
yeah.
screenwriting. It sounds like it kind of reinvigorated your passion.
Well, I mean, the thing is it actually it helped my screenwriting immensely because it was like shortly after that, I was hired to write this heist project, and I had written probably three or four heist projects in my career, and none of them got made because they were all the same. And every room that you walk into in Hollywood, they have two heist projects in development, and they're all the same. And so I got hired to write this thing, and there were some really good people involved, and I could have they expected me to, and I could have sat down and just delivered that standard heist movie and would have got paid nicely and moved on. And I couldn't do it. I was just like, well, I don't know. All this stuff that's been making me very happy in comics. What if I just did that here and I didn't tell anybody about it? And so I just went into a cave. I wrote it. I turned it in, and and they loved it. They're like, this is amazing. Like, what made you do this? I'm like, oh, I don't know. And they're like, do more of this, like push it further, do this, do that. And then that was I mean, we sold that as a movie, and that was one paycheck. That was what turned into the TV show that I set up right before everything went to shit. And that was another paycheck. And so, it was really celebrated for it, and it kind of reinvigorated my movie career, and it gave me, when I took the shot at doing it with the heist movie, then everybody could see like, oh yeah, there's something here that will work in film and TV, and so let's give him a little more leeway with it.
Ah,
And so yeah, I mean that I think that that's why, and that's why I've continued to do it, and that's why, like, I don't know, I love doing it. It is like, well, sometimes I don't like the film business very much. I particularly don't like it now because it's kind of like dead and annoying and awful. But comics is always fun. There's always a way to find the fun in it.
sure. And you work with some great creators that make it, have to definitely uh, increase your excitement you have for in putting these out. Um, One thing I did want to ask, you've written the first two issues of the Wuxia comic Fashion Origins over at Immortal. The
Yeah.
third, I saw the third issue is in pre-launch for Kickstarter. Is that specifically with Immortal, or is that a partnership with Half Evil, or I mean, is it
No, no,
because
yeah, that's a mortal thing. That's a
it
mortal
is okay?
thing. Yeah, I have turned down a lot of right for hire work in the comics business, and that was mostly because I was busy with film and TV stuff, so it's hard to, and I want to do my things, and so and I make more money doing my things, and so it's very hard to, when a company calls up and says, "Hey, do you want to take a $50 page rate to write a shadow one shot or something like that?" It's like, no. Um,
Yeah,
and there's some reasons to do that stuff, but I passed on a lot of it. Flashing Origins, and again, Immortal was, with all of the financial craziness that happened recently. A lot of Immortal's funding was out of Silicon Valley, and so there were some hiccups with that, but that is now back on track. We actually just had a great event at the Nue House in Hollywood last night, where it
nice.
was kind of the Immortal relaunch, and that will start with the Fashing Origins Kickstarter will be the first thing, but yeah, that was just a project that, I don't know, I was Peiwan Shao, the sort of, the mind behind the Immortal Storyverse. He and I kind of became friends, and we talked for about a year and a half before we ever kind of started talking about doing something together, before we talked about business. And we would talk about philosophy and life and just deep, important things. And we very much formed this friendship, this bond. And then eventually it turned to work. And I was not against doing something for them, but it needed to be the right thing. And at some point, well into the relationship, Peiwan called me and he said, "Hey, I've got the thing." Um, and I was skeptical, and I was sort of hoping that it would not be the thing, because I did not at that time have the time and the bandwidth to do something else. However, he came to me, and Fa Sheng was the exact right idea. I mean, it's about a young monk at the Shaolin Temple during the Boxer Uprising in China, about 1900. And so he is a Buddhist monk who is a martial artist, a world-class martial artist, and I am a Soto Zen Buddhist monk with a couple of black belts. And so and it was about this guy who he was at this tipping point in his life where he was like, he had, by the world, by his parents, by his community, he had been fed all of this programming, and when he stepped out into the world, it did not add up. It was not, and so he was finally starting to like ask big questions and trying to seek his truth. Um, and I had that was me, and so he's just like, yeah, this thing is about you. I mean, it's about you if you lived in China in 1900, but it's about you. And I
Well,
saw it
especially,
immediately.
Buddhism has, very specific worldview, and being able to bring that aspect of your life, to put in, infuse into that series and into the character had to, been a huge plus for you. Then,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, I mean, I can literally trace both my Buddhist and my martial arts lineage directly back to the Shaolin Temple,
wow.
where the book takes place. So that I mean that is significant, right? It's like it's looking back at this. We get on, we get on these genealogy sites and we build our family trees, and it ignites a certain part of our brain and our heart and our soul and all this stuff. And this is similar. You're just kind of looking back and being like, oh
Sure.
wow, this is where I came from, in a philosophical sense. That's pretty interesting.
No, it definitely is.
Hmm.
Hey, with Half Evil Comics, is it simply the books that you've put out? Like we know that Peacekeepers, The Jump, they've been out there under the Half Evil Comics label.
Yeah.
Um, will the Breach, uh, will it, as of right now, is it just focusing on that, or do you plan on even having people being able to submit a pitch to you and picking up other people and just working more in a publishing role rather than a creator role?
Yeah, I mean that is a good question. We're being very careful about it, but we do have things in the works. There are, as you said, like we already have our Kickstart. The crux of the business to start is on Kickstarter. And so we have our classic Kickstarter books. We have the Jump, we have the Breach, we have the Peacekeepers, right? Those are our Kickstarter bread and butter, and people want those things. People love those things. Um, the other thing that's happening is we are bringing BANJAX. BANJAX started out being published at Action Lab Entertainment. It is mine free and clear right now, and so this is breaking more news. I'm breaking a lot of news today, and people don't even realize it. But BANJAX is coming back, and it's coming to Kickstarter.
Oh my
And
goodness.
yeah, and it may not initially be exactly what the easiest thing to do would have been, that first season is issues 1 through 4, and it ends at a certain point. And the easiest thing would be to write issue 5 and have it pick up where issue 4 left off. And I will do that. But what I'm doing
Okay.
first is I am doing a 4 issue arc, tentatively called BANJAX Sydney, which focuses on a character from the first series. Her name is Amanda. She
Okay.
was Abel Raines' Gyro. She was Abel Raines's like right hand, right? She was the senior VP who, uh, she was the bitch ass Marsha character. Remember?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. She was kind of taking all those people on the board to task, and so yeah, it's about her, and it is about how she got where she it's how about how she got there, and it is about what she does when the shit hits the fan.
Okay.
And it's pretty
Ah,
wonderful. It's pretty wonderful, and I didn't expect to write it. I expected to sit down and write standard issue 5, but when I wrote down, this is what was there, and I think it's wonderful.
that's
So yeah,
that's such
so
great news here, and that's coming back. I mean,
yeah,
just knowing everything, I figured like Aberrant and Banjax are just kind of, off the table,
yeah,
regrettably. But
yeah,
hearing that's phenomenal news. Not only that you're getting it back, but that you will continue on with it.
yeah. So there's that. So that'll be this year.
Okay.
And so yeah, we do have a couple of books from people I am close to coming out soon, and so we are not in the game of taking submissions at the moment, but I am talking with David Avalone about releasing one of his books, which I don't want to talk too much about right now, but
Sure.
he's great, and it is right it is what you want from him, absolutely.
Okay, okay.
And yeah, and that would be
I
like a
kind
four or
of
five.
I
Yeah.
kind of have an idea where you're going.
Yeah, that would be a 4 or 5 issue series that very much feels like Indiana Jones, but with like a historical bent. And it's pretty
Okay.
wonderful. And then we are doing a kind of a vampire period piece from a writer named Rachel Nelson, professionally known as R.E. Nelson, who is actually she's doing a lot of development with the company in general, but so she has been working with us to kind of make to take Half Evil from single creator to full-fledged publisher. And she is kind of our head of development right now. We don't have a title nailed down for her, but she's been great. But she had this idea, and you know me, like when somebody has an idea, I'm like, make that into a comic book, and I'll help. And she did. She wrote an amazing script, and she wrote such an amazing script that Ray Anthony Height
Oh,
decided that he wanted to come on and co-produce it with us, and so Studio Sky Tiger
okay.
is doing the artwork for it. So
And I'm gonna bump into him next weekend. So
yeah, he's the best guy in comics, and a guy who again, you want to talk about the micro publisher boom. Ray had steady gigs drawn for Marvel and DC, and he decided
yeah,
I'm walking away from this, and I'm opening up my own shop. So Ray's doing the same thing I'm doing,
sure.
and uh, and
And
I
like,
think
yeah, I just had an interview with Dave Franchini, who was the editor and writer for what, almost 20 years or something at Zenoscope, and now he's doing
yeah,
Weird Brain Entertainment, putting
yeah.
out his own content and working, crowdfunding and in the early stages of shaping what the label will look like.
Yeah, yeah. So we're seeing a lot of this, and then the other thing is we are the other kind of tier of this is we are expanding into licensed properties, and we are negotiating for a number of very interesting properties, and I can't speak on those yet, but we have finalized a deal for Evil Knievel, and so we will start with a 4 issue Evil Knievel story. That's amazing.
The stunt man of all stuntmans.
Yeah, there you go. And we're going to, we are going to formally announce that at a big panel at San Diego Comic Con.
Wonderful.
And It'll be an Evil Knievel panel, and we'll have Evil Sun there talking about what it was like to be doing
Oh,
wheelies
cool.
before all the jumps, and we'll have the official Evil Knievel historian and the co-founder of the Evil Knievel Museum there to kind of take us through everything. We'll watch his crazy jumps, and we'll talk about what the book is going to look like and all that stuff. So yeah, very excited about that. So we are building the business out. It is a lot of work, and we are trying to take it slow and be smart about it. And I it is hard. I mean, it may have felt like I was kind of bashing publishers through most of this, but
I don't know. I don't think.
but I mean, as a publisher now, I realize how difficult it is to make deals with other creators and release those books and have everybody get what they deserve and all that stuff. There's only so much of a
Sure.
pie to go around, particularly with the but yeah, so it'll our books will initially be released on crowdfunding platforms. That is how a micro publisher makes his or her money right now. We will particularly once things stabilize, we will find our way into comic shops, whether it is on our own or whether it is a partnership with another entity. And then we are also working with some people about, uh, you know, worldwide distribution, European countries, stuff like that, having the books translated. And so, yeah, the idea is just we will build it out slowly but surely, but we have the catalog for it. And, we will certainly have the catalog for it in 2 years or something like that. So,
Sounds like you've laid a great foundation, and it's cool hearing some of the behind the scenes things that are happening, and something that we can look forward to from Happy Evil Comics, and Yeah, man, I wish you all the best of luck in that. This is just incredible. Just hearing all this. I mean, the gaming, I mean, everything. Um, and for people who want to see more from Half Evil Comics, you can follow Half Evil Comics online on Facebook, X, Instagram, and YouTube at Half Evil Comics, one word. And follow Rylend on Facebook, X, Instagram, and Blue Sky at Rylend Grant, one word. And his fifth issue for the hit series The Peacekeepers. Would that be a bit.ly/Peacekeepers5 or the Peacekeepers?
Yes, Peacekeepers
Okay.
5, yeah.
And one last question before we go. Has Skeet Ulrich paid you the $37 he's owed you for a couple decades yet, or what's going on there?
He has
Because I know a
not.
brother got to eat, so.
Yeah. No, that guy, I'm gonna, yeah, I've spent way too much money on PIs trying to track him down and get my $37, but it hasn't
So
happened yet.
elusive.
Yeah, that guy, Skeet. He's a handsome devil, though.
Definitely. Hey, Riley, thanks for talking with us, and we look forward to everything you got coming out with Half Evil Comics.
Yeah, thanks so much. Check out the Peacekeepers on Kickstarter.
You can't front on that. Yeah.
What you doing? What you doing? What you doing?
Doing. 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 You can't front on that. Yeah.